My name is Amelia. I'm 32 years old, and my husband told me he was leaving me right after I cleared his family's $80,000 debt. I paid off every loan, every threat, every phone call. Then he looked me in the eye and said he was done with me. And when I stood there shaking, his mother smirked and said, "We never liked you anyway." But what they didn't know was what I was planning next. Before I continue, like this video, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from, because this story is going to hurt. Let me take you back to the beginning. I married David because I loved him. Not because he had money, because he didn't. His family didn't either. But love doesn't care about bank accounts, right? At least that's what I told myself when his mother would look at my engagement ring and say it was modest. When his sister would joke about how I was marrying down. When his father would ask if I was sure about this. I thought their coldness would fade. I thought if I just proved myself worthy, if I showed them how much I cared about their son, they'd accept me. God, I was so naive. The financial problems started small. David's mother needed help with her car payment. His father's business was temporarily struggling. His sister was behind on rent. Always something, always urgent, always just this one time. And every time, David would come to me with those puppy dog eyes. "Babe, they're family. We have to help." I worked double shifts as a nurse. I picked up weekend overtime. I canceled vacations, postponed dreams, lived on ramen noodles so his family could keep their lights on, but it was never enough. The debts kept growing. The requests kept coming. And somehow, it was always my name on the paperwork, my credit score taking the hits, my signature on the loans because I had the better job, the better credit, the steadier income. "It's just easier this way," David would say. "We're married. What's mine is yours, right? Right. What's mine is yours. But what's yours? Well, that stayed yours." The breaking point came when his father's business failed completely. $80,000 in debt to suppliers, creditors, loan sharks, the kind of people who don't send polite reminder letters, the kind who show up at your door. I remember the night David came home, face pale, hands shaking. "They're going to lose everything, Amelia. The house, the business, everything." And there I was again, the family ATM. But this time, it wasn't a few hundred here and there. This was my entire future, my savings, my retirement, my security. But I did it. Because I loved him. Because I thought saving his family would finally make me part of it. I liquidated my 401k, took out a second mortgage on our house, borrowed against my life insurance. I turned my financial life inside out to clear their debt. $80,000, gone, just like that. And for exactly 3 weeks, I felt like a hero. David hugged me every day. His mother actually smiled at me. His father shook my hand and called me daughter. I thought I'd finally done it. I thought I'd finally earned my place. If you're feeling angry for me right now, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because it gets worse. 3 weeks. That's how long my hero status lasted. Then David started staying late at work, started taking calls in the other room, started sleeping on the couch because he was stressed and didn't want to wake me. I tried to be understanding, tried to give him space, tried to be the supportive wife I'd always been, but something felt different. Cold, like the warmth had been sucked out of our marriage the moment the last check cleared. Then came that Thursday. I'll never forget it was a Thursday because I'd just worked a 12-hour shift in the ICU, dealing with death and suffering, and I came home thinking at least my marriage was solid. At least my sacrifice had meant something. David was sitting at our kitchen table. The table I'd bought, in the house I was now paying for alone. And he looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Not sad. Not guilty, just done. "I need to tell you something," he said, and I knew. Before he said another word, I knew my life was about to shatter. I've been thinking a lot lately, about us, about what I want, and I think we need to separate. The words hit me like physical blows. "Separate? David, what are you talking about? We just got through the worst of it. Your family's debt is cleared. We can finally focus on us." He shook his head. "That's just it, Amelia. I realized something while all this was happening. I realized I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. But I just gave up everything for your family. I know, and I'm grateful. But gratitude isn't love. Grateful. He was grateful, like I was some charity worker who'd helped out strangers, not his wife who'd destroyed her financial future for his family. Is there someone else? The words came out as a whisper. It's not about that. It's about me finding myself, figuring out who I am without all this pressure. Without all this pressure. The pressure I'd taken on. The pressure I'd absorbed so he wouldn't have to feel it. I stood there in our kitchen, surrounded by the life I'd built and paid for, and watched my husband of 5 years tell me he was done. Just done. Like I was a job he was quitting or a subscription he was canceling. But the real knife twist came the next day. I went to his mother's house to try to understand, to see if she could talk sense into him. Maybe she'd help me save her son's marriage the way I'd saved her finances. She opened the door with this look on her face. Not sympathy, not concern. Something else. Something that made my stomach drop. Amelia, I wondered when you'd show up. I need to talk to you about David, about us. Maybe you could... And that's when she smiled. This cold, satisfied smile that I'll see in my nightmares forever. Oh, honey, she said, and her voice was dripping with fake sweetness. We never liked you anyway. The words hit me like a slap. What? Did you really think clearing our debts would make us accept you? You were useful, that's all. And now? She shrugged. Now you're not. I stood there on her porch, the porch of the house I'd saved from foreclosure, listening to this woman whose financial life I'd rescued, tell me I'd never been anything more than a tool. David's moving back home while he figures things out, she continued. It's better this way. He needs to be around people who actually understand him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to collapse right there on the concrete. But instead, I just nodded and walked away. Because in that moment, something inside me died, and something else was born. If this story is making your blood boil, subscribe and comment your location, because what happened next changed everything. That night, I sat in my empty house, the house I was now paying for alone, and I cried. I cried for the money, I cried for the years, I cried for the woman I used to be before I met David and his family. But then, around midnight, the crying stopped, and I started thinking, really thinking. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what David needed, or what his family wanted, or how I could fix their problems. I was thinking about facts. Cold, hard facts. Fact 1, every single debt I'd paid was in my name. Fact 2, every loan, every second mortgage, every liquidated account, all mine. Fact 3, I'd saved David's family from financial ruin, and they'd repaid me by destroying my marriage. Fact 4, David wanted to leave me, but he couldn't leave the consequences of the choices we'd made together. See, when you co-sign for someone's debt, when you put your name on their financial obligations, you become responsible, not them. You. And when that someone decides they're finding themselves and want out of the marriage, well, the debt doesn't get to find itself too. I spent the next week very quietly making phone calls. Not to David, not to his family, to professionals. People who understand how money and law and consequences actually work. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. I didn't post about it on social media. I didn't call my friends to vent. I just listened and learned and prepared. David moved in with his mother. He changed his relationship status on Facebook. He started posting pictures of himself looking free and authentic. His family welcomed him back like a conquering hero. The poor man finally escaped from his burdensome wife. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd gotten everything they wanted. Their debts cleared and their son back with no strings attached. But strings are funny things. Sometimes you don't see them until someone starts pulling. 2 weeks after David moved out, the first letter arrived. Not to him, to me. Because everything was in my name, remember? And according to the law, when someone in my position decides to restructure their financial obligations, certain procedures have to be followed. I could have just kept paying. Could have kept being responsible for debts that saved a family who hated me for a husband who abandoned me. I could have worked myself into an early grave maintaining a financial house of cards for people who were celebrating my misery. But I didn't. Instead, I called every creditor, every loan officer, every financial institution where my name was on the paperwork, and I explained my new situation, my divorce situation. My inability to maintain obligations that were undertaken for the benefit of people who were no longer part of my life. The law is very clear about financial responsibility during divorce proceedings, very clear about how assets and debts get divided, very clear about what happens when the beneficiaries of certain financial arrangements become unavailable to maintain those arrangements. I wasn't breaking any laws. I wasn't hurting anyone. I was simply stepping back, allowing natural consequences to occur, letting people be responsible for their own choices. The first panicked phone call came from David's father. "Amelia, there's been some kind of mistake. They're saying I owe money on the business loan, but you paid that off." "I did pay it off," I said calmly, "but circumstances have changed." "What circumstances?" "The debt is paid. The debt was transferred to my name, and now I'm getting divorced, which means all marital assets and debts need to be reevaluated." Silence. Then, but the business is fine now. We're not responsible anymore." "According to whom?" More silence. Because he was starting to understand. The debt wasn't gone. It had just moved. And now it was moving again. The second call came from David's mother. "What did you do?" She screamed into the phone. "What did you do?" "I protected myself," I said, "the way you taught me to." "They're saying we owe money again. They're saying the original debts are still valid." "That's probably because they are. Financial obligations don't disappear just because someone else temporarily covers them. They get transferred. And now they're being transferred back. You can't do this. David is your husband. David is my soon-to-be ex-husband who abandoned me, and according to his mother, his family never liked me anyway. Why would I maintain financial responsibility for people who never wanted me around?" The silence that followed was deafening. The third call came from David. His voice was different, scared. "Amelia, we need to talk." "Do we? This isn't funny. They're saying I'm responsible for debts I didn't even sign for. You're responsible for your family's debts, the ones I paid off for you, the ones that are now being recalculated based on our changed marital status. But you can't just... We're still married until the divorce is final." "Exactly. We're still married. Which means you're still responsible for your family's financial obligations, the ones I temporarily covered, the ones that were always, legally, yours to begin with." I could hear him breathing hard on the other end of the line. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "I don't want anything from you, David. I want exactly what you gave me. Nothing. If you're cheering for me right now, smash that subscribe button and drop your location in the comments." Because David was about to learn what real consequences feel like. The beautiful thing about financial obligations is that they're patient. They wait. They follow the paper trail. They find the people who are actually responsible, even when those people have been hiding behind someone else's credit score and bank account. Within a month, David's family was exactly where they'd been before I saved them, except worse, because now they owed penalty fees, interest, and legal costs on top of the original debt. Because creditors don't like being jerked around, David tried everything. He called me crying. He showed up at my job begging. He had his mother call to apologize. He even had his sister offer to work something out. But I was done working things out. I was done being the solution to other people's problems. I was done being grateful for crumbs from the table of a family that had never wanted me there in the first place. "Please," he said, standing in my driveway at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll come back. I'll be a better husband. I'll make my family apologize." "You'll come back?" I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You'll be a better husband, to the woman your mother said you never liked anyway." That's not... She didn't mean... She meant exactly what she said, David. You all did. I was useful. Now I'm not. And that's fine. But useful works both ways. What does that mean? It means I'm not useful to you anymore either. The look on his face was almost worth $80,000. Almost. His father lost the business again. This time for good. His mother had to sell the house I'd saved. His sister moved back in with friends, the way she should have years ago, instead of depending on her brother's wife to subsidize her life. And David? David learned what it felt like to be responsible for his own family's problems, to have creditors calling him, to have his wages garnished, to lie awake at night wondering how he was going to make ends meet. Everything I'd been protecting him from for years, he got to experience firsthand. And somehow he wasn't finding himself quite as successfully when he had to worry about money the way I always had. The final conversation happened 6 months later. David had been calling every few weeks, trying different approaches. Anger, guilt, bargaining, promises. Nothing worked because I wasn't the same woman he'd married. That woman had died the night his mother smirked at me and told me I'd never been wanted. This woman was someone new, someone who understood her own worth, Someone who wouldn't sacrifice herself for people who saw her as disposable. I know you hate me, he said during that last call, but can't you see this is destroying my whole family? I don't hate you, David, I said, and I meant it. I don't feel anything for you anymore. That's worse than hate, isn't it? Please. They're talking about bankruptcy, about losing everything. They lost everything the moment they decided I wasn't worth keeping around after I'd saved them. They just didn't realize it yet. So, this is revenge? No. Revenge would be me trying to hurt you. This is me just stopping being responsible for people who aren't responsible for me. Stopping being loyal to people who were never loyal to me. Stopping being useful to people who used me. The line was quiet for a long time. I loved you, he finally said. No, you didn't. You loved what I did for you. There's a difference. And there was. That's what I'd finally learned. Love isn't one person giving everything while the other person takes it. Love isn't sacrificing yourself so someone else can be comfortable. Love isn't being grateful for scraps while you serve others a feast. Love is mutual. Love is respectful. Love is protective. And what David's family had shown me wasn't love. It was exploitation with a smile. The divorce was finalized 8 months after David first told me he was leaving. I kept the house, the one I'd been paying for anyway. I kept my pension, what was left of it. I kept my dignity, my self-respect, and my hard-earned wisdom about who deserves my energy and who doesn't. David kept his family and their debt and the consequences of believing that love means never having to say you're responsible. I heard through mutual friends that he's working 3 jobs now, that his mother had to move in with relatives, that his father started over in a new city, trying to escape his financial reputation, that his sister finally learned what rent costs when someone else isn't paying it. Do I feel sorry for them? Sometimes. Late at night, when I remember the woman I used to be, the one who would have given anything to save anyone, I feel a twinge of the old sympathy. But then I remember his mother's smile, her voice saying, "We never liked you anyway." And I remember that sympathy without wisdom is just another form of self-destruction. I didn't destroy them. I just stopped saving people who never planned to save me. Today, I'm rebuilding. My finances, my life, my sense of who I am when I'm not defined by what I can do for other people. It's harder than being useful, it's lonelier than being needed, but it's mine. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough. If this story made you feel something, like this video, subscribe for more real stories about finding strength in the places you never expected to look, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this remind us that we're not alone in learning hard lessons about love, loyalty, and the price of both. Remember, you can't save people who don't want to be saved. And you can't love people into loving you back. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for everyone involved is to step back and let people face the natural consequences of their choices, including the choice to treat you like you don't matter. Because you do matter. Your sacrifice matters. Your loyalty matters. And anyone who doesn't recognize that doesn't deserve to benefit from it. That's all I have to say about that.